The three suns of the Ashara void cast long, ethereal shadows across the gleaming hull of Oriel Station. The research outpost hung in the darkness, like a jewel suspended in midnight waters. Its curved architecture, a testament to Sci-Fi engineering. Delicate spires and observatory domes jutted from its central hub, catching and refracting starlight in prismatic patterns. To the untrained eye, it appeared fragile, more art installation than frontier outpost. Dr. Nira Vale stood at the viewport of her laboratory, violet eyes reflecting the distant, stellar dance. Her silver-streaked dark hair was pulled back in a practical knot, revealing the subtle bioluminescent markings along her temples that glowed faintly in concentration. Like most Serphins, she possessed a slender frame that had evolved in the gentle gravity of their homeworld. "Probability matrix alignment at 98%, she murmured, fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "Quantum translation variance nominal." Behind her, taking up nearly half the laboratory, stood the beacon ring, an ancient, circular device of unknown origin discovered on a dead moon in the system. Its surface was etched with symbols that seemed to shift and change, depending on who observed them and under what light. For 3 years, Nira had dedicated herself to understanding this artifact, convinced it contained the key to instantaneous communication across the galaxy. "You're working late again, Dr. Vale." Nira turned to see Major Cale Oren at the doorway, his broad shoulders filling the frame. Unlike the scientist's fluid movements, the security chief carried himself with measured precision. His dark uniform bore the silver insignia of Seraphin Defense, and his eyes, sharp and observant, missed nothing. The ring's harmonic resonance finally stabilized. Nira replied, excitement coloring her voice. "I've managed to synchronize the quantum translation matrix with our communication protocols. If my calculations are correct, this could revolutionize interstellar communication." Cale stepped into the room, his gaze fixed on the artifact with undisguised suspicion. "The Council is getting nervous about your pet project. Activating unknown technology without understanding its original purpose carries significant risks." "We understand enough," Nira countered, turning back to her console. "The symbolism clearly indicates a communication network. Think about it. Major, instant communication across thousands of light years. No more waiting months for messages to reach distant colonies." "And if it's a weapon?" Kyle asked quietly. Nira sighed. They'd had this conversation many times over the past year. "Not everything in the universe is designed to destroy, Major. Some civilizations built things to connect, not divide. In my experience, Doctor, the line between connection and invasion is remarkably thin." Nevertheless, Cale moved closer to examine the readings on her station. "Council Chairperson Sareth wants a full report before you proceed with activation." "Already prepared," Nira said, gesturing to a data crystal on her desk. "Including all safety protocols and contingency measures. The ring will be contained within a quantum isolation field during the test phase. If anything goes wrong, we can simply cut power." Cale picked up the crystal, turning it in his fingers. "I'll deliver this personally. In the meantime, no activation without authorization." Nira nodded reluctantly. "Of course, Major." As Cale left, Nira returned to her calculations. The Major's caution was understandable but frustrating. 3 years of meticulous research had convinced her that the beacon ring represented the pinnacle of a civilization far more advanced than their own. Its construction suggested peaceful intent, designed for connection rather than destruction. What Nira couldn't know was that she had misinterpreted one crucial glyph sequence. What she believed to be a symbol for network connection was, in fact, the equivalent of emergency distress signal. And the signal it would broadcast wasn't calibrated for Seraphin communication systems, but for something far more unexpected. In less than 24 hours, that misunderstanding would change the course of interstellar relations forever. The council chamber of Oriel Station embodied Seraphin aesthetics, curved lines, ambient light, and living plants integrated into the architecture. 7 council members sat in a semicircle, their attention focused on the holographic projection of the beacon ring hovering in the center of the room. The potential benefits outweigh the theoretical risks, Nira argued, gesturing to the simulation. We've taken every possible precaution. The quantum isolation field will contain any unexpected energy discharges. Chairperson, Revos Sereth, an elder Seraphin with pale blue skin, marked with the wisdom lines of age, leaned forward. Your enthusiasm is commendable, Dr. Vale, but this council must consider the safety of everyone aboard this station. With respect, Chairperson, Nira responded. Scientific progress always carries an element of risk. The ring has remained dormant through all our tests. It's clearly designed as a communication device. Based on your interpretation of symbols from a civilization we know nothing about, Council Member Laris interjected, her voice sharp with skepticism. Major Cale Oren, standing at attention near the entrance, cleared his throat. I've reviewed Dr. Vale's security protocols. They are thorough, though I recommend additional emergency response teams on standby during the activation sequence. Nira shot him a grateful look, surprised by his support after their earlier conversation. Chairperson Sereth considered for a long moment, fingers steepled beneath his chin. Very well. You may proceed with the activation test, but only under the strictest safety protocols. Major Oren will oversee security arrangements, and the test will be conducted during minimal station occupancy hours. Thank you, Chairperson, Nira said, barely containing her excitement. We'll begin preparations immediately. As the council adjourned, Cale fell into step beside Nira in the corridor outside. That went better than expected, he remarked. I was surprised you supported me in there, Nira admitted. I don't support recklessness, Cale clarified. But I do believe in being thorough. If you're determined to activate that thing, I'd rather it happen under controlled conditions than in some desperate future scenario where proper precautions might be overlooked. Nira smiled. Pragmatic as always, Major. Someone has to be... Doctor. His expression remained serious. I've scheduled the test for 300 hours, when most of the station is in sleep cycle. Minimal personnel. Maximum containment. I want evacuation routes clear and emergency teams on standby. Understood. I'll brief my research team and run final diagnostics on the isolation field. As they parted ways, neither of them noticed the subtle flicker in the station's power grid. A momentary fluctuation as something within the beacon ring stirred, responding to the preliminary scans that had been conducted during the council meeting. In the depths of space, dozens of light-years away, sensitive instruments aboard a Terran patrol vessel detected an anomalous quantum signature. The ship's AI flagged it for review, adding it to the growing catalog of unexplained phenomena in the region. It wasn't enough to warrant immediate action, but it was enough to raise the alert level from green to yellow. The pieces were falling into place for a confrontation no one had anticipated. Talon Miro, Nira's chief engineering assistant, checked the power couplings for the 5th time. His hands, bearing the 6 fingers characteristic of those born on Serapha's outer colonies, moved with practiced precision over the equipment. Power regulation is stable, he reported, looking up at Nira. Quantum isolation field at maximum integrity. We're as ready as we'll ever be. The laboratory had been transformed for the test. Additional shielding surrounded the beacon ring, and all non-essential personnel had been evacuated from this section of the station. Only Nira, Talon, and 2 other researchers remained, with Major Cale and his security team monitoring from a safe distance. Commence primary activation sequence, Nira instructed, her voice steady despite the anticipation fluttering in her chest. This moment represented the culmination of years of work, a potential revolution in interstellar communication. Beginning power-up, Talon confirmed, channeling energy through primary conduits. The ring began to hum. A sound felt more than heard. Its previously dormant surface illuminated with symbols that flowed like liquid light across the ancient metal. Nira watched, transfixed, as patterns she had spent years studying came alive before her eyes. Quantum resonance stable, she noted, eyes flicking between the ring and her monitoring station. Translational matrix aligning with projected parameters. The hum deepened, vibrations radiating through the deck plates. The symbols on the ring began rotating, creating new patterns and configurations. Power levels rising faster than anticipated, Talon warned, fingers flying across his controls. Adjusting containment field. Kale's voice came through the communication system, tense and alert. Dr. Vale, we're detecting energy fluctuations beyond your predicted models. Consider aborting. Just a moment, Nira insisted, watching the readings. The ring is establishing its operational parameters. This is expected during first activation. But something was changing. The light emanating from the ring shifted from a soft blue to a pulsing red. The rotation of symbols accelerated. Dr. Vale, Talon's voice rose in alarm. The quantum signature is modulating into a broadcast pattern. It's not just receiving, it's transmitting. Impossible, Nira muttered, reviewing the data streaming across her screen. We haven't programmed any transmission protocols. Whatever it's doing, it's not following your programming. Kale's voice cut in sharply. Shut it down, now. Nira hesitated for a crucial second, torn between scientific discovery and caution. That moment of indecision proved costly. The ring flared with blinding intensity. A pulse of energy discharged into the laboratory, overloading the isolation field. Alarms blared as emergency systems activated throughout the section. Cut all power, Nira shouted, finally recognizing the danger. Talon lunged for the emergency shutdown, but before he could reach it, the ring emitted a second, more powerful pulse. This one wasn't contained within the laboratory. It propagated outward, passing through the station's walls as if they were no more substantial than fog. In an instant, the pulse expanded in all directions at faster than light speeds, carrying with it a signal that would be recognized by only one species in the galaxy. On the bridge of the TFS Resolute, 40 light-years away, alarms screamed to life. Major Eris Trent, commanding officer of the Terran vessel, jerked awake from a light sleep in his command chair. Report, he demanded, instantly alert despite the abrupt awakening. His tactical officer, Lieutenant Vega, responded with professional efficiency. Sir, we've detected a priority alpha distress beacon. Quantum signature matches Terran emergency protocols. Origin? Trent asked, straightening in his chair. Sector 87 Delta, sir, specifically from the uncharted region near the Ashara Void. Trent frowned. We don't have any outposts in the Void. No, sir, we don't. Vega confirmed, her expression grim. But that's definitely a Terran emergency beacon. And it's not just any distress call. It's a Deathworld extinction event signal. The bridge fell silent. The Deathworld extinction event protocol was reserved for only the most dire circumstances, situations where human habitation faced complete annihilation. It hadn't been activated in over 70 years. Signal Fleet Command, Trent ordered after a moment of consideration. Inform them we're responding to a DWE signal from the Ashara Void, then set course for the signal origin, maximum speed. As the Resolute altered course, similar scenes played out across dozens of Terran vessels throughout the sector. The distress signal, a call designed to reach every human ship within 100 light-years, had been received by the entire 7th Fleet, and they were all responding. Back on Oriel Station, chaos had erupted. The energy pulse had disrupted systems throughout the research section, and emergency teams were struggling to contain the damage. What happened? Kel demanded, bursting into the laboratory with a security team in environmental suits. Nira stood amid the wreckage, her face ashen. It wasn't a communication device, she whispered, staring at the now dormant ring. It was a beacon. A beacon for what? Kale asked, dreading the answer. Before Nira could respond, the station's long-range sensors officer contacted them with news that would turn concern into outright fear. Major Oren, Dr. Vale, we're detecting multiple ships dropping out of FTL travel near the outer perimeter. Unknown configuration, approaching at combat speed. They're ignoring all hails. Kale and Nira exchanged looks of dawning horror. Whatever Nira had activated, it had just brought an unknown fleet to their doorstep. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, another force had detected the energy pulse, a group that saw not a distress call, but an opportunity. The pirates of the Ashara Void, opportunistic predators who haunted the uncharted regions, set course for the source of the unexpected energy signature, anticipating vulnerable prey. The stage was set for a three-way confrontation none had anticipated. Aboard the TFS Resolute, Major Eris Trent studied the tactical display with practiced calm. The holographic projection showed Oriole Station, identified as a Seraphim research outpost, surrounded by approaching vessels. Fleet intelligence had minimal information on the Serphins. They were known to be peaceful researchers who generally avoided contact with more militaristic species. Analysis of the approaching ships? Trent asked his tactical officer. Lieutenant Vega expanded a section of the display. Mixed configurations, sir. No unified design philosophy or recognition signatures. Most likely a pirate fleet or mercenary band. Weapons powered and shields raised. And the station itself? Minimal defenses. Standard shields for cosmic radiation, but nothing that would withstand concentrated weapons fire. Trent nodded thoughtfully. Status of our responding forces. The Indomitable and Vigilant will arrive within 20 minutes. 4 more heavy cruisers report ETA of 1 hour or less. The remainder of 7th Fleet is mobilizing, but will take longer to reach our position. Sir, Communications Officer Patel interrupted. We're receiving a transmission from Oriole Station. Text only, on an open frequency. Put it through, Trent ordered. The message appeared on his command console. Unknown vessels. This is Oriole Research Station. We are a peaceful scientific outpost. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. They don't know who we are, Vega observed. More importantly, they don't know why we're here, Trent replied. Send a response. Oriole Station. This is Major Eris Trent of the Terran Federal Ship Resolute. We are responding to a Priority Alpha distress signal originating from your location. Be advised, hostile forces are approaching your position. Recommend immediate activation of all defensive systems. As the message transmitted, Trent turned to his executive officer. Prepare boarding teams. If that station sent a Deathworld extinction event signal, there might be humans in danger aboard. On Oriole Station, Kale read the Terran response with growing alarm. Distress signal? We sent no such thing. He turned to Nira, who was working frantically at a console. Could the ring have generated this signal they're talking about? It's possible, Nira admitted, her fingers never pausing in their work. The energy signature it broadcast was complex, layered with quantum information I still don't fully understand. Well, now we have 2 problems, Kale muttered. Unknown hostiles approaching from the void, and a Terran military response force who thinks we called for help. The station's sensors officer interrupted with fresh urgency in his voice. Major, the unidentified vessels are launching smaller craft. Attack pattern confirmed. Kale made a swift decision. Raise all shields. Evacuate non-essential personnel to the core sections. He turned to his communications officer. Send a message to the Terran vessel. Inform them we did not intentionally signal them, but we would welcome assistance against these attackers. As Oriole Station braced for impact, the first wave of assault craft from the pirate fleet opened fire. Energy beams struck the research outpost's minimal shields, causing them to flare brightly against the darkness of space. Shields at 60% and failing, reported the defense systems operator. They're targeting our power distribution nodes. Kale grimaced. The pirates knew exactly where to hit a research station. The Serpents had built for science, not war, and their defensive capabilities were limited. Divert emergency power to shields, he ordered, and prepare evacuation protocols for... He was interrupted by a brilliant flash of light outside the viewport. One of the pirate assault craft had exploded, then another, and another. A sleek, angular vessel with unmistakably military lines had entered weapons range. The Resolute had arrived. The Terrans are engaging the hostile fleet, the sensors officer reported, unable to keep the relief from his voice. Kale watched as the Terran ship moved with practiced precision, its weapon systems targeting the pirate vessels with devastating accuracy. Despite being outnumbered, the military vessel's superior technology and tactics were immediately evident. "Open a direct channel to their commander," Kale instructed. Major Trent's face appeared on the communication screen. Human features set in an expression of focused determination. "Oriole Station. This is Major Trent. We're engaging the hostile forces, but my tactical analysis suggests they were waiting for us. This has the hallmarks of an ambush." "An ambush?" Kale echoed. "That's impossible. We only activated the artifact hours ago." "Artifact?" Trent's expression sharpened with interest. "What artifact?" Before Kale could respond, the tactical situation changed dramatically. The remaining pirate vessels, rather than retreating in the face of superior Terran firepower, adopted a new formation. They weren't fleeing. They were regrouping for a coordinated attack. "Major Trent," Kale said urgently. "They're concentrating their forces. It appears they're preparing to..." His warning came too late. The pirate fleet launched a barrage of high-energy projectiles, not at the Terran vessel, but at Oriole Station. "Brace for impact," Kale shouted. The station shuddered violently as multiple impacts overwhelmed its remaining shields. Emergency lighting flickered on as primary systems failed. "Hull breach in sections 8 through 12, reported the damage control officer. "Emergency containment active, but we're losing atmosphere in the research wing." On the communication screen, Trent was issuing rapid orders to his crew. "Oriole Station, hold position. Reinforcements are incoming, and we're deploying defensive measures around your perimeter." As if in response to his words, more Terran vessels dropped out of FTL travel nearby. Larger, more heavily armed warships that immediately began deploying fighter squadrons. The pirates, finding themselves suddenly outgunned and outmaneuvered, scattered in disarray. Some attempted to flee, while others, perhaps recognizing the futility of escape, turned to make a final, desperate attack on the station. They never got the chance. The newly arrived Terran vessels executed a perfect pincer movement, catching the remaining pirate ships in a devastating crossfire. In moments, the threat was neutralized, leaving only debris where the hostile fleet had been. Inside Oriole Station's control center, Kyle watched the display with a mixture of relief and bewilderment. "They just saved us," he murmured. "But why?" Nira asked, joining him at the viewport. "We never called for help." "I think," Kale said slowly, "that's exactly what your beacon ring did." Dr. Nira Vale stood in the damaged laboratory, surveying what remained of the beacon ring. The ancient device had partially collapsed after its energy discharge, revealing internal components never meant to be seen. Engineer Talon Miro worked carefully among the fragments, scanning each piece with meticulous attention. "The quantum signature analysis is complete," Talon reported, looking up from his work. "The signal the ring transmitted matches what the Terrans call a Deathworld extinction event beacon." "Deathworld?" Nira echoed, the term unfamiliar. "It's what they call planets like Earth, environments with high gravity, extreme temperature variations, abundant predators, and natural disasters," Talon explained. "Conditions that forge particularly resilient and adaptive species." Nira processed this information with growing understanding. So, the ring wasn't a general communication device. It was specifically designed to call for help from species capable of surviving extreme conditions. Exactly, Talon confirmed. The creators of this technology must have known about humans, or at least species like them. They built this as an emergency measure, a way to summon help when facing extinction. The implications were staggering. The artifact wasn't just ancient. It suggested connections between civilizations, separated by vast distances and time. Before Nira could explore this revelation further, Major Kale entered the laboratory, accompanied by a human in a Terran military uniform. "Dr. Vale," Kale said formally, "this is Major Eris Trent of the Terran Federal Ship Resolute." Trent was taller than Nira had expected, with the dense musculature characteristic of humans raised in Earth's higher gravity. His movements were precise, economical, a soldier's efficiency, but his expression held curiosity rather than hostility. "Dr. Vale," Trent greeted her with a slight nod. "I understand you're responsible for activating the beacon that brought us here." "Unintentionally," Nira admitted. "We believed it to be a communication device. We had no idea it would summon your fleet." "Fortunate for you that it did," Trent observed, glancing at the lab's battle damage. "The Ashara pirates would have stripped this station to its framework." "We're grateful for your intervention," Kale acknowledged. "But we're also concerned about the scale of your response. Your fleet arrived prepared for war." "We responded to a Deathworld extinction event signal," Trent explained, his tone matter of fact. "That's the highest priority distress call in our protocols. It indicates an imminent threat to human survival." "But there are no humans on this station," Nira pointed out. "Which is precisely what makes this situation so interesting," Trent replied. "Someone built a device capable of sending a signal that specifically triggers our emergency protocols. A signal we designed." A heavy silence fell over the laboratory as the implications sank in. "How is that possible?" Kale finally asked. "That's what I hoped you could tell me," Trent said, turning his attention to the remnants of the beacon ring. "May I?" At Nira's nod, he approached the device, studying it with evident fascination. "Our historians have found references to benefactors, advanced species who may have visited Earth thousands of years ago. Some ancient texts describe sky guardians, who promised to return if humanity faced extinction." "You believe the creators of the ring were these benefactors?" Nira asked skeptically. "I believe," Trent said carefully, "that this technology represents a connection we don't yet understand. The question is, was it designed as a one-time emergency measure, or as part of a larger system?" Before anyone could respond, the station's alert system activated. Kale moved immediately to the nearest communication panel. "Report," he commanded. "Major Oren," came the urgent response. "Long-range sensors are detecting multiple vessels approaching from deep within the Ashara void. Configuration matches the initial hostile force, but there are many more of them." Kale exchanged a grim look with Trent. "It seems your arrival has stirred the hornet's nest. Major, those weren't just random pirates," Trent concluded. "They were an advanced scouting party for something larger." "How much time do we have?" Nira asked. "At their current speed, approximately 4 hours," Kale replied. Trent activated his communication device. "Trent to Resolute. Alert all Terran vessels to prepare for a major engagement. Request immediate reinforcement from Fleet Command." He turned to Kale and Nira. "We need to evacuate your non-essential personnel. The station is about to become a battleground." "We can't abandon Oriel," Nira protested. "This station contains years of research, irreplaceable artifacts." "And it will all be destroyed if the Ashara forces overwhelm us," Trent interrupted. "My priority is saving lives. Dr. Vale, not archives." Kale placed a restraining hand on Nira's arm. "He's right. We need to begin evacuation procedures." As Trent left to coordinate with his fleet, Nira turned back to the broken ring with determination in her eyes. "Talon, help me salvage these components. If the ring was designed to call for help, it might contain other functions we haven't discovered. "What are you thinking?" Talon asked, already moving to assist. "The original builders created this technology to summon Deathworlders in times of crisis," Nira explained, working quickly. "They wouldn't have relied solely on military intervention. There must be more to this system. Defensive measures, perhaps, or communication protocols we haven't activated." Kale, overhearing her theory, paused at the door. "You have 4 hours, Dr. Vale. Make them count." As the station prepared for evacuation and the Terran fleet organized its defenses, Nira and her team worked feverishly to unlock the ring's remaining secrets. Their race against time would determine not just the fate of Oriel Station, but potentially the future relationship between two civilizations thrown together by an ancient summons. The command center of Oriel Station had been transformed into a joint operations hub. Seraphin researchers worked alongside Terran military officers. The cultural differences between the two species temporarily set aside in the face of common danger. Chairperson Sereth, who had remained aboard despite evacuation recommendations, stood with Major Trent and Major Kale before a holographic display of the approaching Ashara fleet. 87 vessels confirmed, Trent reported, his voice calm despite the overwhelming numbers. Mixed configurations, but all armed. They're maintaining formation. Unusual discipline for pirates. "Not pirates," Sereth corrected softly. "Raiders, perhaps. But with this level of organization, we're looking at something more structured. A military force disguised as pirates to avoid diplomatic repercussions." Kale nodded in agreement. "The question is, whose military? No recognized power would openly operate in the void." "Whoever they are," Trent said. "They've committed substantial resources to this operation. The question is, why? What makes this station so valuable that they'd risk confronting a Terran fleet?" "Perhaps it's not the station they're after," Sereth suggested, "but rather, what was discovered here." Their speculation was interrupted as Dr. Nira Vale entered the command center, accompanied by Talon Miro. Both looked exhausted, but determined. "We've made a breakthrough," Nira announced without preamble. "The ring fragments contain quantum entanglement technology far beyond our current understanding. But we've managed to adapt some of its principles to our systems." "What does that mean in practical terms, Doctor?" Trent asked. Talon activated a portable display, showing schematics of a device cobbled together from Seraphin technology and salvaged ring components. "A quantum disruption field," he explained. "Theoretically, it could interfere with targeting systems and navigation computers within its range. Not powerful enough to stop the Ashara fleet, but it might create enough confusion to give us a tactical advantage." Trent studied the schematics with professional interest. "How soon can it be operational?" "We've already begun installation," Nira replied. "But there's a catch. The power requirements are enormous. We'll need to divert energy from nearly all station systems, including life support in the evacuated sections." Kale frowned. "That leaves us extremely vulnerable if the disruption field fails." "It's a calculated risk," Nira acknowledged. "But without it, I don't see how we can survive long enough for additional Terran reinforcements to arrive." Trent exchanged glances with his tactical officer, who had been running simulations on a separate console. "The disruption field could work in tandem with our defensive strategy," the officer suggested, "if we position our vessels to capitalize on the confusion it creates." After a moment of consideration, Trent nodded. "Proceed with the installation. Dr. Vale, we'll coordinate our fleet movements to maximize its effectiveness." As Nira and Talon departed to complete their work, Sereth turned to the two military officers. "If we survive this encounter, we will need to establish formal diplomatic relations between our peoples. This accidental summoning may have changed the course of galactic politics." "Let's focus on survival first," Kale suggested grimly. "Diplomacy can wait until we're not facing imminent destruction." 3 hours later, the command center hummed with tense activity. The evacuation had been completed, with non-essential personnel transferred to Terran vessels, positioned safely away from the impending battleground. Only a skeleton crew remained aboard Oriole Station, those necessary to operate critical systems and the newly installed quantum disruption field. Major Trent had returned to the Resolute to command the Terran fleet, while Major Kale coordinated the station's defenses. Dr. Nira Vale monitored the disruption field from a hastily assembled control station, making final adjustments to the experimental technology. "Ashara fleet now 30 minutes from weapons range," reported the sensors officer. "They've deployed into attack formation." Kale activated the communication link to the Resolute. "Major Trent, the enemy will be in range shortly. The quantum disruption field is ready for activation on your command." Trent's voice came through clearly. "Understood, Major Oren. We've positioned our vessels to create a defensive perimeter around Oriole Station. When the disruption field activates, we'll execute a coordinated strike against their command ships." "Be advised," Nira interjected. "The field will affect all electronic systems within its range. Your vessels may experience temporary disruptions to non-essential functions." "Acknowledged. Dr. Vale, we've briefed all captains and reconfigured our systems to prioritize weapons and propulsion." As the minutes ticked by, tension mounted in the command center. The Ashara fleet continued its inexorable approach, vastly outnumbering the Terran defenders despite the arrival of additional reinforcements. "They're launching fighters," announced the tactical officer. "First wave approaching at attack velocity." "All personnel, secure for combat," Kale ordered. "Dr. Vale, stand by to activate the disruption field on my mark." Nira's fingers hovered over the activation sequence, years of scientific caution warring with the immediate need for survival. "Ready, Major." The first volley from the Ashara fleet illuminated the darkness of space, a barrage of energy weapons and projectiles aimed at both the station and the defending Terran vessels. "Now, Dr. Vale," Kale commanded. Nira activated the disruption field. For a heartbeat, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like a ripple in a pond, a wave of distortion spread outward from Oriole Station. Where it passed, electronic systems flickered and sensor readings became unreliable. The effect on the attacking fleet was immediate and dramatic. Fighter craft veered off course, colliding with each other or firing at phantom targets. Larger vessels struggled to maintain formation as their navigation systems provided contradictory information. "The field is working," Talon exclaimed, monitoring the effects. "Their targeting systems are in disarray." Through the momentary chaos, the Terran fleet struck with precision. Vessels that had appeared defensive suddenly executed offensive maneuvers, their weapons targeting the command ships Trent had identified. The Resolute itself led a squadron of heavy cruisers in a daring attack run against the heart of the Ashara formation. "Major," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the lead Ashara vessel. Audio only." "Let's hear it," Kale ordered. A harsh voice filled the command center, speaking in heavily accented but understandable galactic standard. "Seraphon Station, this is Commander Vex of the Ashara Coalition. Your Terran allies cannot save you. Surrender the artifact technology, and we may allow your scientists to live as our research slaves." Kale glanced at Nira, who shook her head firmly. "Commander Vex," Kale responded. "This is Major Kale Oren of Oriole Station. Your attack constitutes an act of war against the Seraphon Confederacy and its allies. Withdraw immediately, or face the consequences." The response was a humorless laugh. "Brave words from a research station. Your Confederacy is light years away. Major Oren, we have studied your people, scholars and artists, not warriors. You will break easily." The transmission cut off as another wave of Ashara fighters approached. This group, having adjusted to the disruption field's effects, they concentrated their fire on a section of the station where the field emitters were located. "They've identified the source of the disruption," Talon warned. "Field integrity dropping to 70%. Divert additional power to the affected emitters," Nira instructed, working frantically to stabilize the field. Outside, the battle had fully engulfed the space around Oriole Station. Terran vessels fought with disciplined coordination against the more numerous but less organized Ashara forces. The superior training and technology of the Terran fleet was evident, but the sheer numbers of the attackers threatened to overwhelm them through attrition. On the bridge of the Resolute, Major Trent analyzed the tactical situation with growing concern. "They're trying to split our formation," he observed, focusing fire on our lighter vessels while their capital ships move to encircle the station. "Sir," reported his executive officer, "the Vigilant and Dauntless report critical damage. They're withdrawing to regroup." Trent made a swift decision. "Signal all vessels to execute Protocol Hammer and Anvil. We'll draw their heavy ships away from the station, then catch them in crossfire when the second wave arrives." As the Terran fleet adjusted its tactics, the battle around Oriole Station intensified. The quantum disruption field continued to hamper the Ashara forces, but they were adapting, focusing on conventional targeting rather than relying on electronic systems. Inside the command center, Nira worked alongside Talon to maintain the field's effectiveness. "We need to modulate the quantum frequency," she suggested. "Make it harder for them to compensate." "The emitter array wasn't designed for this kind of adjustment," Talon warned. "We could lose the entire field if we push it too far." "It's already failing segment by segment," Nira countered. "We need to take the risk." Before Talon could respond, a violent impact shook the station. Alarms blared as damage reports flooded in. "Direct hit on the primary power distribution node," reported the engineering officer. "Switching to backup systems. But the quantum field is drawing too much power to sustain." Kale made a tactical assessment. "How long can we maintain the field at current capacity?" 20 minutes. Perhaps less," Talon estimated. "After that, we'll need to shut it down or risk a catastrophic power failure. Then, we make those 20 minutes count." Kale decided. "Dr. Vale, can you increase the field's intensity for a short duration? Give our Terran allies an opportunity to strike decisively." Nira considered the request, calculating risks against potential benefits. "Yes, but it would accelerate the power drain. We'd have 10 minutes at most before complete failure." "Do it," Kale ordered. "I'll coordinate with Major Trent to ensure they're ready to capitalize on the advantage." As Nira and Talon began the dangerous process of overclocking the quantum disruption field, Kale opened a secure channel to the Resolute. "Major Trent, we're going to give you a window of opportunity. The disruption field will intensify for approximately 10 minutes, after which it will fail completely. Whatever you're planning, that's your moment to execute it." Trent's response was immediate. "Understood, Major Oren. We've been waiting for exactly such an opportunity. Stand by." Throughout the Terran fleet, vessels began maneuvering into new positions, a complex dance that appeared chaotic but followed a carefully orchestrated plan. The Resolute itself moved to a seemingly vulnerable position, drawing fire from multiple Ashara warships. "Field modulation complete," Nira announced. "Initiating maximum intensity in 3, 2, 1. The disruption field pulsed visibly, its effects magnified tenfold. Throughout the battlefield, Ashara vessels suddenly lost all electronic guidance. Weapons misfired, engines surged unpredictably, and communication between ships ceased entirely. In that moment of perfect confusion, the Terran fleet struck. Vessels that had appeared to be retreating suddenly reversed course, catching the disoriented Ashara ships in devastating crossfire. The Resolute led a precision strike against the Ashara command vessel, its weapons finding vulnerabilities in the larger ship's suddenly weakened defenses. "It's working!" Talon exclaimed, watching the tactical display. "The Ashara fleet is in disarray." But victory came at a cost. The strain on Oriole Station's power systems proved even greater than anticipated. Conduits overloaded, and emergency systems struggled to compensate. "Power fluctuations critical," warned the engineering officer. "We're losing containment on the quantum field." "Shut it down," Kyle ordered, "before it takes the entire station with it." Nira hesitated, watching the battle unfold. The disruption field had given the Terran fleet a decisive advantage, but the Ashara forces were beginning to recover. "Just a few more minutes." "That's an order, Dr. Vale," Kale insisted. "Shut it down now." With reluctance, Nira initiated the emergency shutdown sequence. The disruption field collapsed, its energy dissipating in a final pulse that washed over the battlefield. For a moment, silence seemed to fall over the command center as everyone watched the tactical display, waiting to see if their gamble had paid off. The answer came in the form of cheers from the tactical officers. The Ashara command vessel was drifting, its weapons silent and its engines dark. Throughout the fleet, other ships were breaking formation, some fleeing, while others surrendered as Terran vessels moved to secure them. "We did it," Talon breathed, disbelief and exhaustion in his voice. Nira sank into her chair, the adrenaline that had sustained her beginning to ebb. "For now," she cautioned. "But this was just one battle. The Ashara coalition, whoever they are, knows about the ring technology now. They'll be back." Kale nodded grimly. "Which means we need to understand what we've stumbled upon, and quickly. The next time, we may not be fortunate enough to have Deathworlders answering our accidental summons." As if in response to his words, the communication system activated. Major Trent's image appeared, his uniform bearing the marks of battle, but his expression triumphant. "Oriel Station. The immediate threat has been neutralized. We've captured several Ashara officers, including their fleet commander. I believe it's time we had a more thorough discussion about this artifact of yours, and what it means for both our peoples." 2 weeks after the Battle of Oriel Station, as it was already being called in Terran military circles, representatives from the Seraphin Confederacy and the Terran Federation gathered in what had once been the station's main observatory. The room had been repurposed as a diplomatic chamber, its panoramic view of space serving as a dramatic backdrop for historic negotiations. Dr. Nira Vale stood at a viewport, watching as Terran and Seraphin vessels conducted joint patrols of the Ashara Void. The cooperation between the two species had evolved rapidly from battlefield necessity to cautious alliance. "Quite a sight, isn't it?" Major Kale Oren joined her, his uniform now bearing the additional insignia of diplomatic liaison. 2 weeks ago, we didn't even know the Terrans existed. Now we're planning joint defense strategies. It's remarkable how quickly perspectives can change when survival is at stake, Nira observed. "Though I'm not entirely comfortable with the militarization of our research outpost." "A necessary adaptation," Kale replied. "The interrogation of the captured Ashara commanders has confirmed our worst fears. They're an expansionist coalition from deep within the void, targeting advanced technology throughout this sector. They've been watching Oriel Station for months, waiting for us to activate the ring." Nira frowned. "How could they have known about the ring? We kept its discovery classified." "Apparently, they've encountered similar artifacts in other abandoned systems. They call them summoners, and believe they're keys to technologies left by an ancient civilization they refer to as the Architects." Before Nira could respond, Major Trent approached, accompanied by Chairperson Sareth and several high-ranking officials from both delegations. "Dr. Vale, Major Oren." Sareth greeted them formally. "The final terms of the Border Protection Accord have been agreed upon. I believe you'll find the provisions satisfactory." Trent handed them each a datapad containing the treaty summary. "The Terran Federation will establish a permanent defensive presence in the Ashara Void, including a military outpost adjacent to Oriel Station. In exchange, Seraphin researchers will collaborate with our scientists to study the ring technology and its implications." Nira scrolled through the document, noting the extensive provisions for knowledge sharing and mutual defense. "This goes well beyond a simple security arrangement," she observed, "because what we're facing is more significant than a single pirate fleet," Trent explained. The interrogation of Commander Vex revealed disturbing information about activities deep within the void. Multiple factions are searching for these artifacts, believing they hold the key to technologies beyond our current understanding. The architects, Kale murmured. Yes, Sareth confirmed. According to Terran archaeological records, there are references to an advanced civilization that may have visited multiple worlds thousands of years ago. They appear in the myths and legends of dozens of species, including both humans and serfins. Sky Guardians, Trent added. That's what some of our oldest texts call them, beings who promised to return if humanity faced extinction, or who left behind a means for endangered civilizations to call for help from those best equipped to provide it, Nira suggested, the implications of her accidental discovery continuing to unfold. Which brings us to the most intriguing aspect of this situation, Sareth said. The ring was specifically designed to summon humans, a species from a high-gravity, high-danger world with the physical capabilities and martial technology to confront threats that more peaceful species like ourselves would struggle against. Deathworlders, Nira said, using the term she had learned from the Terrans. Species forged in environments that would kill most other intelligent life. Exactly, Trent nodded. The architects, whoever they were, seem to have recognized that diversity of evolutionary paths creates diversity of strengths. They built a system where those who develop in peace could call upon those who develop in hardship when necessary. Kale studied the treaty document thoughtfully. So this alliance is not merely about our immediate security, but potentially about fulfilling a role the architects envisioned thousands of years ago. A rather poetic interpretation for a security chief, Sareth observed with gentle humor. Even security officers can appreciate cosmic irony. Chairperson, Kale replied. Dr. Vale accidentally activated a distress beacon, calling for help we didn't know we needed, from allies we didn't know existed, against an enemy we weren't aware was watching us. Nira smiled ruefully. When you put it that way, my research mistake sounds almost predestined. Perhaps it was, Trent suggested. The timing of your activation coincided perfectly with the presence of our fleet in this sector. Had you triggered the beacon a month earlier or later, our response might not have been as swift or as substantial. The group fell silent, contemplating the chain of seemingly random events that had brought them together. Beyond the viewport, the stars of the Ashara void shimmered against the darkness, a frontier that would now be jointly explored and protected. The treaty signing ceremony will begin shortly, Sareth reminded them, breaking the contemplative moment. As the individuals most directly involved in these events, your presence is requested. As the others moved toward the diplomatic chamber, Nira lingered for a moment at the viewport. From a certain perspective, her misinterpretation of the ring's purpose had been a catastrophic error that had nearly resulted in the destruction of Oriel Station. Yet that same error had forged an alliance that might prove crucial in the face of unknown threats lurking in the unexplored regions of space. Dr. Vale, Kale called from the doorway. They're waiting. Nira turned from the stars, her mind already racing with new research possibilities. The fragments of the ring, combined with Terran analytical capabilities, might reveal more about the architects and their intentions. Perhaps there were other beacons waiting to be discovered, other connections to be made between civilizations separated by vast distances and evolutionary paths. Coming, Major, she replied, leaving the viewport behind. Whatever the future held, it would be faced not in isolation, but in partnership with allies summoned from across the stars by an ancient technology she had only begun to understand. As she entered the diplomatic chamber, representatives from both species rose in respect. The accidental summoning had become a deliberate alliance, a first step toward fulfilling a design set in motion millennia ago by beings who had understood that diversity was not merely beneficial, but essential for survival in a dangerous galaxy. And as the treaty was signed, establishing the border protection accord between the Seraphin Confederacy and the Terran Federation. Nira couldn't help but wonder what other ancient summons might be waiting throughout the cosmos, ready to bring together civilizations that complemented each other's strengths and compensated for each other's weaknesses. The beacon ring had been broken in the process of its activation, but its purpose had been fulfilled. Deathworlders had been summoned. An entire fleet had responded, and a new chapter in interstellar relations had begun, all because of a mistranslation that had proved, in the end, to be exactly the right message sent at exactly the right time.